Well, hello.
Hey, stranger, how are you?
How are you? Happy season two, or happy season due, season dos, season due, season mbili, or season doi in Portuguese.
How about in Japanese? Ni.
Season ni.
Yeah.
I love
Well,
it.
because it's ichi, ni, san, shi, go.
Oh,
So,
good for
ni.
you. Oh, we're so international, aren't we?
Hi.
But I'm also I'm really smitten with mbile, which is Swahili for mbile, which is number two. So again, no more
For our
coffee.
podcast listeners, Don was shaking his nanas.
So welcome back to season two. Isn't this exciting?
This is exciting. It's a new day, a new
It's
year.
a new day, and I've got new equipment.
Don, I thought we weren't going to bring that up.
Well, my new equipment is basically this big bright thing in the front of my face.
Don!
Oh, it's a microphone. Really?
Oh.
No.
Oh, is that what that is?
Again, it's really happy to see me right now. So,
To our podcast listeners, you got to get us on YouTube. Come on.
right.
If only for the visuals.
So yes, I'm very excited to get us back for season two. What are we talking about this week, Gary?
Well, I mentioned it's a new year, and we are, 6 weeks into it. But what a year it's been so far. There's something happened on January 20th. What was it? Oh, yes. A new president was inaugurated. And there's been a lot of activity, a lot of drama, a lot of anxiety. So this episode is aptly called Political Whack-A-Mole.
Very
And we will not take a deep dive, but we will touch on that.
Yes, yes. So it has been quite a couple months. We've taken our time getting started, but we're here with full engines, gassed up and ready to get on the jetway and take off. So we'll be right back. Welcome back to Don and Gary Doing 60. We're here to unwrap and unpack navigating the world at this age.
I'm sorry, what?
This age.
This age. And Don, what age would that be?
Never you mind, it's a new year, and we're going to just be editing whatever age that might be, whatever we feel like being this year.
But
So,
just to be clear, you're not going back in time, are you?
I'm trying not to.
Okay.
I'm trying not to. So don't forget, you can find us on Instagram at Don and Gary Doing 60. We are on YouTube at Don and Gary Doing 60. Please, for the full frontal for all of us, all of this great stuff. And we're trying to see if we're going to create a presence on Blue Sky soon. So if that does happen, I will absolutely place that into our credits and into the screen so you can see what that might be, and you can join us there on Blue Sky.
And not to mention Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other fabulous podcast platforms.
That's why you're here, Gary. You keep me in line, and you keep the credits going.
Just keep the check coming.
So let's talk. Let's start the new season. What's going on?
Well, before we dive into the political whack-a-mole, as I call it, I wanted to share with you a shocking revelation I found out about myself.
Okay, well, I remember the last time you gave us a shocking revelation, and that actually went viral. So not to mention a virus probably was created. But go ahead.
What was my shocking revelation before? I forget.
Something about sex.
Oh, right, yes. Well, this one does include sex.
Okay.
I'm still the same Gary in
Okay.
every way.
That we know and love. That we know and love.
But, okay, so a little side note is that, as I've mentioned before, my mother is older. She's in her late 90s.
Yes.
And one thing, I go see her, I talk to her every day, but I see her every Saturday, and we usually go out for lunch. So as we're heading out of the house, as a good son, I hold out my hand so she's walking down the steps. And if I happen to be wearing like a short sleeve shirt, she grabs my arm, and her fingers are like ice. I'm like, you've been inside. Why are your hands so cold? It's like, well, she's older, less insulation. Well, the revelation about me is that, and I don't know if it's because of my age or the fact that I've lost over 40 pounds, that like I tell people I've lost 40 pounds of insulation. When I go out now during these winter months,
Yeah.
it's going to be in the low 50s. For other people, that could be nothing, right? But for me, normally I run hot, so low 50s is nothing. But lately, I've been putting on the gloves, the scarf, the knit hat. I think I mentioned recently that I went to a live theater, the show Some Like It Hot, and it was like an icebox in there.
So it wasn't hot
Inside the
at all,
theater.
was it?
What's that?
Something is not hot and some like it hot.
Well, I think my caption was, it might be hot. It's supposed to be, the name of the show was Something Like It Hot, but it was not hot in there. It was like an ice box. I kept my gloves and knit hat scarf on inside the theater throughout the whole show. So my shocking revelation is that I've got the cold hands of a 97-year-old woman.
And the cold heart of a 23-year-old.
How is that possible?
Listen, it might be the insulation thing. I think you're right. I mean, you're looking good. You're on your Ozempic journey, which is taking...
Yeah, but what, I lost weight in my hands?
Hey, listen, I think you lose it everywhere. I think it also, there's less literal insulation. Girls are always cold. Girls are always cold.
Well, listen, since you mentioned Ozempic, I have to say there's a tie to you on Ozempic, in that this was a real quick story on CNN. Anderson Cooper was talking to Dr. Sanjay Gupta, and they talk about Ozempic. And it says a study says that Ozempic reduces drinking and alcohol cravings. I know, you make that face. I'm thinking, Don, you could never go on Ozempic. Just know that. No. For me, it's like, food cravings or, like appetite suppressant type of thing. Sure. But I never thought about alcohol cravings that would go away.
I did not know it had that effect.
Well, that's why you're not on Ozempic.
but okay, here's the thing. It's actually interesting because, back to you, kudos and applaud for you for continuing on the journey. Has this number increased any more since the last time you updated us?
I'm down like 44 pounds. So whatever, I don't remember what I said last time. I remember I was excited when I hit the 40 pound, but now I'm like 44.
Last season you were on 40, but now you've got another 4 pounds gone. So that's amazing. But again, reminder everyone in audience that Gary is doing this the complete wise and educated way by using an endocrinologist, a
nutritionist,
using their doctor, not jumping in there and overdosing, no pun intended.
Right.
The way that a lot of people have been doing. So, I mean, I got to say, your pictures look good. Those pictures.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's a slower, steady process, but it's healthier and better that way than doing the quick fix one, and because all that weight is going to come back eventually if you do it that way. But anyway, let's talk about you. We just passed Valentine's Day, so what did you and your husband do?
You know what we did? We did the day before? I said no cards, no chocolate, not necessary. We just don't. 25 years. It's like, okay, how many more cards and how many more chocolates? Now, of course, to make him feel bad, I did go buy some chocolate and put it in the back of my car. And when on Valentine's Day, I threw it on the table and said, "There's your chocolate. Where's mine?"
You threw them on the table.
I didn't
romantic
throw them on the table.
person.
No, we actually met up with our friends Scott and Michelle out in Hermosa Beach that night too. It's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "They've been married a long time too." He said, "I don't know. Let's go get a drink." So apparently, none of us is on Ozempic. But yeah, it wasn't, honestly, yes, it's a nice day. It's all that good stuff. Of course, everything's still good, but it's like, okay, there's only so many times we need to do this. It's like Christmas is almost the same thing. Like, what do you want? I don't know. What do you want? I don't know. I don't need anything. So,
in other words, every day is Valentine's Day with you guys.
Let's go with that.
Yeah.
We'll go with that and realize that it was not that big a deal. I hate to say, how about you?
Yeah, okay, I'm glad you asked. So this year, Valentine's fell on a Friday night. Mm-hmm. So what I told my friends, well, it's Friday night. I'm in San Francisco. I'm getting ready to stay home alone again. I was working on updating my living trust. Can you be any more romantic? Yeah, so that's what I did Friday night.
Okay. Hey, you know what? Do what you got to do. You be you.
But I will say that this this is a holiday weekend, there's, I would say, hundreds of thousands of people converging on San Francisco for a couple of reasons. Yes. One is it's the culmination of the Chinese New Year celebration.
Right.
So last night was the Chinese New Year parade through downtown San Francisco, and it draws literally hundreds of thousands of spectators.
Yep.
So I went with a friend of mine, and we checked it out. We've done it, several times. It's just a good, fun parade. I believe, I'm not mistaken, San Francisco has the largest Chinatown outside of China.
Really?
I mean, other cities have their Chinatown, but I believe ours is one of the biggest or one of the biggest. Yeah, so it's a big draw, and everyone's there and in different groups, and so that was really fun. And then also happening this weekend is the NBA All Stars. That's basketball, Don.
The orange one, right? The big orange one.
Yes, the big orange ball that bounces. Yes, and I always thought it was like one big game where all the major players from all the basketball converge and play against each other. But apparently, this is like a multi-day round robin type of thing. So there's been events outside of Chase Center where the Warriors play, which is near my house. There's been events at Moscone Center, the convention center, which is also near my house. And then I've heard stories of, the basketball players visiting different schools and neighborhoods and doing fun events for the kids. So there's really a lot of PR. So it's been Friday being Valentine's Day. The mayor, who I follow on Instagram, the mayor of San Francisco.
Who aren't you buddies with, apparently, going to
Well, I've met him a few times. I saw a post that he put on Instagram saying that 250 couples showed up at City Hall on Valentine's Day, Friday, to get married.
Wow.
And so, and underneath the grandeur of the City Hall rotunda, it's a beautiful setting. And so he performed some ceremonies.
Really?
And it was nice to see that the ones he posted was a straight couple and also a gay couple. So it was just really nice. There's a lot of love and hope and positivity in the air. So
yes, and I think honestly on that note too, we need a lot of love and hope. And it was great to see the diversity being celebrated with Chinese New Year because, of course, I love San Francisco and I love the food, but also the Chinese representation in that city is huge because of the population.
Huge presence,
Yes, absolutely. And it's someplace we've been to millions of times and enjoyed everything with their culture, so it's great to have that. Plus, I did read about the 250 couples going to get married that day.
At City Hall,
in your City Hall. And also that your mayor's actually performing these. So, on what's been a really tough couple of months, it's nice to see these little nuggets of positivity and cultural diversity and things that are going forward that keep the country strong. So I don't know about you, but I've had a big tough time with this transition. It's been very alarming. It's been disconcerting. We talked about social media and also a lot of local things. You know how smitten I am with Palm Springs. Unfortunately, there's a lot of negative things taking place and starting to happen in Palm Springs against the LGBTQ plus community out there. So let's dive into this.
There's a lot to unpack, as we mentioned in our intro, and so it's coming in so fast and furious, so too much to cover. So we're just gonna have everyone look at high points or low points and just have a little discussion. But one thing that was interesting, I saw online a interview that Steve Bannon did back in 2019. And I didn't see the whole interview, but this segment, he was talking about how the media can only concentrate on one big story at a time. So what you need to do is flood the zone, he said, which is exactly what all these executive orders and Doge and we're going to talk about have been doing. Things have been coming out so fast, so furious that's what I thought of when I saw this was that game that you see at a fair, whack-a-mole. It's a big table with a bunch of holes. They give you a sledgehammer and a mallet. Some animal, some rodent.
It's a mole.
A mole. Oh yeah. Hello, whack-a-mole. A mole's head will pop out at different holes, and the point of the game is to take your sledgehammer and hit them 7 times you can get them. But you keep missing them, and that's exactly how I equate what's been happening in these first 6 weeks. So much going on. So just to list some of the topics that were brought up, whether an executive order or some action by Doge, is they talk about border control and immigration, birthright citizenship, the pardoning of 1,500 insurrectionists, the tariffs, which I want to talk about, the issue with Canada becoming the 51st U.S. state, changing the name Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America. I guess he wants to buy the Panama Canal. He wants to take over Gaza Strip and make it a resort. He wants to buy Greenland and call it red, white, and blue land. Executive order saying there's only two sexes. There's no gender ideology. So it's you're a man or you're a woman, and that's it. All the LGBTQ issues, banning from serving the military, blocking funding for gender-affirming medical care for minors. One of the big things in the beginning that you don't hear about anymore is TikTok. Right? That was a big deal. Right. He withdrew from the Paris Climate Agreement. He withdrew from the World Health Organization. And then he created Doge with Elon Musk.
Was that his creation or was that the other one?
Well, who came up with the idea? I don't know. But Elon Musk is the one heading that charge. And he's basically giving him free reign. So he's going after the following departments or agencies within the government. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, FBI, CIA, the Pentagon, the Department of Education, the FAA, USAID, which is the Agency for International Development. They say they're America's main global provider of humanitarian aid. He's fired over 200,000 federal workers. Basically gave them walking papers. And with these different departments, I'll just quickly say that the president's press secretary said that the intention of Doge is to audit and review the various departments for any waste management. I'm totally on board with that because we all know whether it's federal, city, or state level, there's always room for improvement, and audits, all for them. But this is an audit to me is we're going to go meet with the department head, show me your records, let's review it, come back and say here's what we found. But he's basically just taking an axe, whatever, and just chopping every one down, and that's what I and of course it's creating massive upheaval, anxiety, animosity, just across the board.
And also the fact that they don't know, they're doing this indiscriminately, not knowing what they're doing, because I don't know if you saw the latest update, I think it was yesterday, where they're saying they had fired all of the people who were technically responsible for the our nuclear weapons, and they hired them back after they fired them because they didn't realize that they had fired them and they had no background or people with background in technology to handle nuclear weapons for the country. So that was just an update too. But just back to quickly to what you're speaking of, I know you know who Roy Cohn is, right? Roy Cohn was also a master manipulator at the time back in the 80s and 90s, who was this person who the current president's mentor was. Who's basic, if you read anything about this gentleman, I will loosely call him a gentleman, was basically inciting chaos, which is what you're talking about right now, where everything is happening all at once to keep you looking over at everything happening here, and yet we don't know what's happening on this over here.
It's all distractions.
So they're creating all of this mass amount of chaos and unrest. A lot of people are, myself included, very traumatized from this. It's one thing that I find it's incredibly overwhelming on social media, because everyone's got a story now, left, right, middle, center, extremist. Everyone has a story now, and a lot of pages that I used to follow on Facebook have turned only to inciting more unrest or trauma by posting the latest thing that's happening. So I'll be honest with you, I'm jumping back off of social media a great deal. It's caused me a lot of angst. I hear you, and I think, we should jump into this a little bit more, the specific ones that you wanted to talk about, but I definitely believe that a deep dive is necessary later for us to come back into it. So what's on the top of your mind right now with regards to all this?
Well, so one of the big topics that came up was that of the tariffs, because he said, we're going to, put a tariff on China, and they're going to pay for it. Just like you said, Mexico's going to pay for the wall, right? Well, we know that never happened.
That never happened.
But the reason why I mention tariffs is because in the business, the company I work for, we deal with tariffs. Our products are produced in China, so I know very well what happens. There's this misunderstanding when you interview the man on the street that they think China's going to pay for it because that's the message that has been given to them by who.
Yeah.
That, we're going to make them pay for it. And it's like, no, they don't pay for it. They charge a tariff. So if I'm the company who's importing product from them, I, as a company, have to pay for it.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to pay that tariff. I'm going to make my customers pay for it. So in our case, what happened during his first presidency, we said, I'm going to increase the tariffs. Now, there's always been tariffs, but they've been relatively low. So prior to his first term, when we'd quote a customer, the tariff is kind of built into that, right? So we just gave him a price. Here's the price of the product, and there you go. Well, when he raised the tariff in his first term, what we did was say, hey, customers, as you know, presidents increase the tariffs. And so for this particular order, randomly say, the tariff charge is $5,000. So what we're going to do is we're going to absorb half of that. So we're only going to charge you half of that. That was in the beginning. But then with the pandemic, this thing dragged on way too long. So at some point, we said, it's dragging on. So sorry, customer, you're going to have to pay the $5,000 tariff, not the full amount.
Because the company can't afford to continue to absorb
Right,
costs.
right. It was a matter of, empathy, customer service, what do you want to do? You want to keep your customers happy. Like, we're all in this together. So in the beginning, you pay half, we'll pay half. Fair? Okay. But then it dragged on. Then it went to, we'd have them pay the full amount. Well, now, we always include on our quote the product, separate line item for tariff, et cetera. But then all the chatter about tariffs going up again, so customers are contacting us, oh, well, you quoted us X back in January, so what's going to happen now? What I've seen on communication is that we will honor that amount that we put on the quote for X, period of time. But let's say that same customer comes back to us next year, because, the orders don't get processed right away. They might get a quote, and it could be a year or two before they implement it.
So your quote's good for a year, basically, or until you...
Yeah, it's like 9 months a year. Sometimes they'll ask for how long is this quote good for? And then we'll say, if it's January, we might say it's good till the end of September or December, whatever. But let's say a year goes by, we quoted this back in 2024, so we will update the quote, but it's now going to reflect the current tariff, right? So that's kind of how we do it. But that's a long way of saying that the end consumer pays the tariff.
Oh, yeah.
So China does not pay the tariff.
I completely understand. And that is applicable to quite a few borders in different countries.
Right.
Especially with Canada also, who hit back. And so a lot of these things and I guess the thing that's interesting about these statements that he's making is that he starts them off and they actually, who knows, I don't know where the one with China is going, but I think the one with Canada was actually rescinded for a number of days.
Both Canada and Mexico fought back and whatever. Yep. So he said, it's on pause for 30 days. And they're trying to figure out. So I haven't heard any other update.
Right. The problem with that is that he's claiming that as a win.
Of course.
And I think that's where, unfortunately, what I think, and I think our audience will also learn that we're probably going to start diving into this a bit more because it requires more information to be out there for more people to understand it. Not everyone is pursuing all the details that you're going into right now, Gary, with everything that we're going to talk about now and in the future. But we need to educate ourselves so we understand what's actually happening. Because this whack-a-mole game is keeping us distracted, and all of these things being thrown out there. AKA Roy Cohen, who was the master of this, who taught this man how to do all of this, created all this chaos. And unfortunately, it causes so much duress and trauma to us that we get inert and maybe don't react to certain things.
Right.
So, I hear you. I think it's... And what's interesting, and what we'll talk about, I think, with our next episode when we talk about possibly financial planning, is the big balloon of inflation that might be heading our way due to all of these increases in tariffs and whatever else he's doing.
Right.
Because when it comes to financial planning, I don't want to go down here now, it's how your portfolio is set up. If it's majorly in stock market right now, does it make sense to stay there if a large inflation balloon is coming? Because that will affect the stock market. So I don't know if you thought about that nugget, but...
I haven't.
It's another thing to consider. So I don't want to go down that one because we'll talk about it when we talk about financial planning and all that stuff that's required for us at this age. But what else you got? What else was on your mind with that?
Well, I think going back to Doge,
that's another
and
one.
All the departments and agencies they're going after, because obviously they're not only, forcing people out of their jobs without any. Here's the thing that bothers me. It's like when Musk and the president were in the his office with recently, like last week, with a bunch of reporters asking him, and Elon specifically, about Doge. It's like, oh, it's about being transparent. So if you go on the Doge website, well, I've not gone there personally, but people who have gone said it's one, it's hard to find, and two, there's really nothing on there. So if you want transparency, put it on the website, but there's nothing there to read. So we don't have any understanding of, like I said previously, I know audit is a great thing, right? But tell us what you found. Why are you suddenly firing 200,000 workers in the federal workers? You're going after the FBI and the CIA and asking for names of people, of agents who worked on specific cases that really were going after Trump, right? Yeah. So he's on his vendetta tour.
Yes.
I
have a question though, and I guess maybe I don't know if you can answer this for me, because I question, Elon's a private citizen, basically. Right. Is he able to, as a private citizen, have all this ability to do this?
Well, he didn't go through a security background check, nor did Jared Kushner and all the others in the first round.
Okay.
But he's, according to the president, a special government employee.
What qualifies him for that?
He doesn't have to be approved by Congress. He's not elected into it. It's a temporary appointment. Apparently, I saw somewhere, and I've heard a couple times, that he can only work 130 days.
Yes, if they follow that, yeah.
And I guess it's, because, well, obviously he's got multiple businesses that he runs. But here's the other thing, is that some of the departments, or many of the departments that he's going after, there was a report of they had over 32 investigations into things against his company, and suddenly they're not investigating those anymore. And isn't interesting now the government has a contract with Tesla to spend $400 million on his toaster truck car, whatever that is.
Yes. So the thing that's interesting to me is that, again, I guess so far it's legal what's happening, is that right?
Well,
bending it a bit.
The way he's going after different departments, it's like the way it's written in the Constitution. You may want to do that, but you have to get approval from Congress, and all that is just being swept aside.
Right. So where's the approval from Congress? So this is not truly legal what's happening, right?
Well, you've seen stories of different judges who have tried to stop certain of these because it's illegal or whatever, or put a pause on it, whether it's going after an agency or after a department. So there have been several judges who have done that. There's been groups of people who have filed class action suits. You had this massive firing of the inspector generals. He fired 17 inspector generals from various departments. They lead independent investigations, audits, or inspections when waste, fraud, abuse are suspected in the agencies they serve. So that's what they were already doing. Their job, and it's bipartisan, is to investigate the department and look for that. Well, he's fired all of them, and now he is doing them at random, whack-a-mole, just knocking out all these departments.
And I question what this billionaire's qualifications are, other than being friends with the president. Their
entitlement.
Again, and also indiscriminate. But one another little tributary story I heard was about the employees who were fired from Yosemite.
I hadn't heard that one.
Yeah, those people had all been let go too because of because of that, all the people that control the crowd regulation, the traffic in and out, a lot of those services are now going to be gone. So Yosemite actually could be quite overrun with tourists because there's no one there to monitor the ingoing, outgoing, the trash, all those things that keep the national park services running have been cut.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more chaos, and I know that was a side note story.
Yeah.
But the other thing I'd mentioned, you'd mentioned the website. There was a website for clarity or transparency, you said. But they've actually changed that because I just was hearing on NPR yesterday that there's a new website coming up that actually goes in real time to update what's happening, the transparency with regards to that process. Because at one point there was just a PDF that was produced once a day that was sent out in the morning that basically didn't tell you anything. So now that transparency is changing a bit too. So there are things that people are doing to create transparency. The problem is, or the challenge is, a lot of us are not taking the time to educate ourselves again.
Right.
And there is, but the thing is, back to whack-a-mole, there's so much happening. Where do you look? Where do you follow? What do you follow? And then we have to start asking, like, what can we do about these things? Because that, for me, is going to be the next goal. Like, what can be done?
And you mentioned about the anxiety and how people feel overwhelmed. When I see interviews, whether through the news or I see posts on Instagram and such, where there are farmers and other folks who are directly feeling the impact of some of these changes. And, I feel badly because this is their livelihood. Now, on the other hand, it's like, well, you say you voted for him, but they feel deceived. And it's like, that's not what, he said, which is true. He said he was going to do certain things, but then on the other, he did say a lot of things of what he wanted to do. He didn't go to specifics. He didn't say, I'm going to shut down farms, right? But basically, the impacts of some of the executive orders and things that he's done is doing exactly that. And
he's not done.
And he's not done. So there's a whole lot of buyer's remorse.
Yes, and also the true fallout hasn't truly hit yet.
Right.
What I mentioned, inflation, and you mentioned tariffs, and what that will mean to the consumers in the next months to come.
And who is it going to impact is the lower and middle class.
All of us.
And yet the Elon Musks and the Bezos, and they're all
the billionaires.
And will continue to do so. And
I've heard the word oligarchy thrown around a lot more now, because basically this is what's taking place. I know we're going really deep and dark right now, but it's something that we want to talk about because we feel, I think, Gary, you'll agree with me, that we're kind of trying just to throw some education out there, just some information, in case you haven't had a chance to look at things and start thinking about this, because it can be overwhelming. But the oligarchy is basically a class of people rich people rule everything.
Right.
That's the basic gist of it. But yeah.
Yeah, but the question is, what can we do? There was an article written by someone who said that what he's witnessing in terms of protests here and maybe lawsuits there, they're kind of all disjointed. There's no unity and strength in the fight back against everything that's been happening. There isn't one person or one agency that's kind of taken the charge. But I think, like I said, everyone, we're all so overwhelmed. There's so much coming at us. Where do you start? Because I could be impacted by 4 different things going on, and it's like, which battle do you fight?
Right.
And what can I do as one voice? Because he's already got the job. So what can we do? True. I mean, they say, at the 2-year mark, you can, vote out some of your Congress people. Like, well, they're not having any power now to do anything. So.
Well, again, I mean, just to backtrack a little bit, because at one point, remember before we took a break for the season, you had mentioned some of the reasons why we believed that the Democratic presidential candidate did not win.
Yeah.
Because they weren't truly speaking to the people that made a difference in the voting.
Right.
Also concerning, I know we're going through a lot of stuff, but I mean, if you look at the actual results of people who voted, there was a lot of people that didn't even bother voting.
Right, which is the case in any election.
True.
Yeah.
True. More people did vote, but unfortunately not more people that would make a difference.
Right.
So there's a lot happening and a lot to be concerned about.
So I'll try and add a little levity to this.
Please do.
Some of the things that he wants to do or intends to do, because all these others are so serious, but some just seem so silly, like Kennedy Center Honors. Celebrates the arts in all the different formats. Yeah. And they always do a big event, big award ceremony. They pick like 7 or so different artists from different areas, and they celebrate them, and it's televised, and it's a big thing. He fired the board president and named himself as the president. And then he fired all the board members and brought in his people, including the vice president's wife and some other folks. Just like in his cabinets, all the people he's picking are ones who, support him, kiss the ring, whatever.
Until he doesn't need them anymore, and then they're thrown away. And they're either not paid, or he just turns on them. The
Right.
thing is, like, how many people are going to come to Kennedy Honors? Can you only bring Carrie Underwood and Kid Rock so many times?
Right. Right. So you'll see a definite. There's still going to be artists who maybe
We'll
like a
see.
Carrie Underwood. I would say she would deserve to be an honoree, if you will.
Yeah.
Some of those I don't know, but and by the way, she got a lot of flack for singing at the
I hope so.
inauguration.
I hope
Yeah.
so. Kid Rock was already on the way out, but who
Yeah.
cares?
No, but see, because I had this conversation with a friend of mine. I said, yeah, I mean, this particular inauguration to sing for him, I understand, but at the same time, it's like, I think was she doing it more for the country to bring a little unity? No, okay. Well, next
I'll
subject.
let you have that. I don't care. Never. I will never listen to her music. She was a product.
Wow.
Of
Okay. See, that's not the top of my list in terms of.
Well, I know, but
all
it's
this-
like when you're talking about Kennedy Honors, and it's like we kind of went
Yeah.
down the whole thing because how many people are going to actually accept that invitation now, except people that want to kiss the ring.
Yeah.
Because most artists, a lot of people have walked away from it. People who had acts booked there canceled them.
Right.
A lot of people have walked out. Of course, nominees in the past have been quite substantial in Hollywood, in the arts, artists,
Yeah.
musicians. It's going to be very interesting to see who accepts these invitations going forward
Oh, right.
and how they will be canceled.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. But, the whole cancel culture thing is just.
well, that's one of our episodes that's in the vault that we're going to pull out in season 2.
Yeah.
Cancel culture.
Couple other things. He's going after MSNBC and CBS to get rid of them. Like,
Really?
could they maybe have aired a story that was criticizing him? I don't know. So as Casey knows, I think I mentioned this earlier, but the things like changing the name of Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America,
Yeah.
changing the name of we want to buy Greenland, which is run by another country,
Yeah.
and change it to red, white, and blue land.
It sounds like an amusement park.
Right? The Gaza Strip, where we're just going to move how much? 2 million Palestinian people off the land, and then we're going to clean it up and make it the Riviera of the Middle East.
So those two things you just mentioned, do people really believe that's going to happen? Are people so blinded that they believe this?
Well, the ones who follow him, yes, but the reactions from other world leaders.
Oh, yeah.
Canada has been pummeling him. Mexico, that woman, she is standing up to him. Obviously, he's alienated many, if not all, of our European allies.
Mm-hmm. But they're also like
allies
Canada,
across, around the
Canada's
world,
taking all American products and putting them on the bottom shelf in grocery stores.
or taking them off the shelf,
Taking off the
like the
shelf.
bourbon or whatever,
Yes.
taking off the shelf.
Yes.
And then, they supply energy to certain states in the upper east side of the country of the U.S., and they're threatening to just cut off the electricity. I mean,
Do it.
there's things that you're doing, and I'm like,
Keep it coming. I'll get a candle. I'll buy a candle.
yeah. So, you basically, pardon my French, but you're shitting on your friends,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Canada, Mexico, Europe. I don't understand, and Congress is not doing anything.
And that's, I guess, where I find the most trauma is what in our organized government is possible to push back, to get reason back in place, or at least reviewing what's taking place before it actually happens, before someone like Musk can go and fire thousands and thousands of people.
Right.
What are the stopgaps? Where is reason coming back into it? And that's where I get concerned.
Well, one phrase I've heard is there are no guardrails.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no guardrails.
Yeah.
It's a free for all, and it's being allowed to happen. Now, granted, people and individuals and groups are finding back where they can, but their voices, I don't think, are being heard loud enough.
Have you read anything about anyone getting together? I mean, there's been a lot of press about political rallies and people staging protests and things like that, but those only have so much power,
Right,
much
right.
impact, and it's got to be more on the government level. But I haven't heard anything yet. read about anything yet.
I mean, I'll see after the fact. Oh, in this city, they blocked off the streets and did this and that. But honestly, living in San Francisco, I never hear in advance of any protests coming up.
Oh, really?
I usually see them on the news after the fact, like, oh, I didn't know that happened. Where they're protesting in front of City Hall or they're blocking. Here's how I found out about one protest when I was still driving up to San Rafael to across the Golden Gate Bridge to go to work. Driving in the morning, and suddenly all the traffic is stopped on the approach to the bridge. I'm thinking, oh, maybe there was an accident. Well, it happens. And then police cars start showing up, and of course more cars keep coming, and there's nowhere to go. You can't get out of the lane you're in.
Right.
And eventually I saw through my rearview mirror that there was police were directing people at the back to turn around, and you went the wrong way on the off-ramp to get off that portion of the approach to get back on the city streets. So eventually got my turn, made a U-turn, went the wrong way, but with guidance from the police. It's because it was protesters for whatever it was that time, I forget. They not only just blocked the traffic on the bridge where the cars go, but they cemented themselves to different things, or chained themselves. So you couldn't just like pick them up and drag them to the side.
Okay.
It involved machinery and a lot of cutting. So I ended up getting home, I think, about 3 or 4 hours later.
Oh, you're kidding.
So I was basically stuck in traffic for like 3 hours. And then, because we couldn't go anywhere.
Right.
So I hear about it after the fact. Had I known on my drive to work that there was going to be a protest, I said, hell no, I'm working from home today.
Huh.
So, But to your point, yes, it can be protests, but are they organized? Are they people hearing about it? Does it have an impact? It might, depending on what it is and how many people are there and who listens.
Right. So I guess
Anyway.
one of our jobs is to keep a positive note and maybe try and find more good nuggets out there of people doing.
Well, please, if you have any good nuggets right now, because I feel like a Debbie Downer right now.
No, it's not. It's a little dose of reality. And, we didn't want to come in here just all doom and gloom, but we did want to also, show you, our listeners and viewers, that we are concerned and we're trying to find ways to be involved, but also probably most trying to educate ourselves and illuminate things that are going on. So
Right.
Hopefully this will be helpful in some way, so you can take a look at yourselves and see how you're gathering your information, what you want to do with it.
And with so much coming at us, maybe you pick the one or two areas that maybe directly impact or may impact you, and do some research on that and see what can I do. Maybe you don't have to lead the effort, but you can find out, there's this meeting or this protest coming up. Maybe I can do something there. I mean, I don't know.
There are ways to also boycott through consumerism and non-consumerism, depending on what is being affected. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. If we talk about DEI in another episode, that was an article I found on that. But I mean, we are now probably at our
Saturation point.
saturation point.
But it's good that we're talking about these things, Gary, because I'd be honest with you, I was very shook. I was shook when this all started happening. And just a side note, I mentioned it briefly, Palm Springs is actually seeing quite a bit of escalation in bullying and a lot of racial slurs taking place in the LGBTQ plus community out there. That's where we spend a lot of time, but also there've been a lot of local businesses have been targeted. There have been some crazy people out there doing some really bad things, and not being held accountable. So what good thing has come out of that really quickly is that the local community in Cathedral City got together and protested the person that was creating this. There was one individual who was creating a lot of issues by using their bullhorn in their front yard and backyard constantly. They would call the bullhorn bully, and I'm using them as non-binary because I'm not going to single them out because there are more than two genders. So yeah, that person actually was finally cited after a lot of pressure from the community to the police department in Cathedral City to take action, which didn't happen. So some good things can happen after protests and bringing awareness to the community. So it can be done.
I don't know if I mentioned this to you before we start recording, but I don't know if I mentioned it during the recording. Really quickly on Doge and the impact of that. Oh. So, they are going after federal agencies on different areas. But recently, I want to say last week, here in San Francisco at City Hall, they were a group of people who showed up wearing MAGA hats and Doge T-shirts, visiting various departments within City Hall, said around noon on Friday, demanding that employees turn over digital information related to alleged wasteful government spending and fraud. Turns out they were scammers. Luckily, the employees of those departments said, we're not giving you nothing. And instead, they called the sheriff, because the sheriff is within City Hall and they do rounds. By the time they got there physically, the people had fled. So they're checking video surveillance, see if they can track them down. But they said that Doge, they said the exact mission of which seems entirely up to Musk's capricious moods and conspiracies, is only focused on federal government spending and would not have any business in San Francisco City Hall. So these people, these scammers, didn't do their homework. They went into a City Hall of San Francisco and go, give me your thing. We need to check for waste. But thankfully, those employees are like, they gave them the finger and
hit the road, Jack.
Hit the road, Jack. So there's definitely going to be, with all this going on, there's going to be impersonators and scammers. You're going to get a phone call or an email or something that's going to think you're being targeted, and it's 9 times out of 10 it's going to be a scam, right? So that's another thing that comes out of things like this.
Yeah.
And they could get some vulnerable. Like, we warn my mom all the time, like, never give any personal information over the phone and whatever. And luckily, she's been good about it. But you just never know that there could be someone at home who could, here's my bank account number. Here's that, and everything gets just destroyed. So anyway. More conversations to follow on that.
And we promise to lighten up a little bit in the episodes to come. We do have some things in the vault. Some Ain't Nobody Got Time for This interviews, which we had back, we still have in the vault. We have to release. Those will be fun.
One of them, I will say, is I'm looking forward to. We already recorded it. Is a guest who is she and I are cousins, and she's also, when you were growing up, you two were next door neighbors.
Yes.
And for our longtime listeners from here and 3Ps, we mentioned a couple times here and there Big Angie as your next door neighbor. Well, this is my cousin Elena, who is Big Angie's daughter.
Yes.
She lives on the East Coast. We've not seen her in years. So this was a lovely reunion for the three of us.
Yes.
So that's a really fun episode. Yes. We have a guest who appeared twice on 3Ps and is joining us for the first time on Doin and Gary.
Yes.
Because he's a member of the 60 Club now. So that's fun.
Yes.
And then you mentioned cancel culture. So these are some episodes that are already recorded. They're coming up soon. You mentioned there's a couple other episodes we're going to talk about. One is, if you haven't done already, at our age, the things you should already have in your vault, a living trust, a will, whatever arrangements for your next lifetime. So that's a topical conversation to have, because you and I are both talking about we're updating our living trust and things. Yes. So we'll talk about that, and more to come.
Yes,
and more guests.
And more
for
guests,
anyone that's interested in joining us.
And a little more lightheartedness coming your way too. We're just going to keep ourselves.
Yes, please. I can't do
things in.
Yes,
but we're so good at it. So, are we ready to shut this down?
Shut it down, Don.
Okay, let's shut it down. So thank you for joining us for season 2 or season Mbile for season 2 of Doin and Gary Doing 60. You can find us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as Gary said, also on Instagram, and of course on YouTube at Doin and Gary Doing 60. Please join us next time as we navigate the deep waters of getting older, sometimes in a lifeboat with a hole in it.
Wow. That doesn't sound too promising.
Well, no, we got a cork. I've got a cork in my mouth.
All right, we'll put a cork in it.
And on that note, we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye, Gary.
Bye.